Hey folks, I had to do a retake. I know I said I'm a one take kind of guy, but that's why I'm talking to you, the voices in my head. So, dear internet audience, I'd just like to talk to you about being in a delusional state a little bit, having schizophrenia. Why? For the simple reason that the world around me has sort of told me you have to treat yourself like you're in a delusional state, whether or not you even are. And so, naturally, I don't find this to be delusional at all. But I'm willing to talk about it as though it is a delusional state, just so that way I don't get canceled on YouTube. And tell people things like, you're not delusional, when you clearly are. Or tell them things like, yeah, just not that. And so, namely, the crummy part about all that is that I still have to recognize that the whole reason why I believe this is because of spirits and God, right? So none of that is delusional. I 100% believe that. None of that is delusional. However, this thing about delusional states, as I've grown, as I've lived in this life, and as I have continued to live in this life, strange things would continue to happen around me. In 2014, I had a near-death experience. I was told by my mother to get a little kiss on the side of the road. A little demonetized. And basically, it was right after a fight. It was right after high school. She told me I was useless. She said I was a pain to be around, and that she really just didn't want anything to do with me. And so naturally, I decided, okay, fine, I'll go stand in the blind corner out here in the middle of the country. And so I go out, San Salvador County, of course. So there's plenty of drunk drivers, and plenty of people speeding, especially on that blind corner where, people pray that they just get to run over people quite frequently. That was just a thing that people would talk about. And sorry for the wind, by the way, everyone, because surely the audio quality is awful. But anyway, so I go out there, and before I get run over, or even potentially run over, I pray to God and Jesus, and I pray that they either take me to heaven, or for whatever reason I thought, what if God was real and Jesus Christ was real, but heaven wasn't, for whatever stupid reason. I just said, then just please put me in an everlasting dream or something where I just can't wake up if I'm not worthy of heaven, or if you don't want me in heaven, just please make it so that way I'm in a dream where I can't wake up. And so, I stand in the middle of the road, I see this car, it's speeding up on me, and I'm like, oh man, thank God, a crazy guy. And so I just let out my arms like this, hold out my arms in the God take me pose, and he swerves around me. I see the flash of his headlights, the wind from the car whooshes past me and through my hair. And for the first time in my life, I noticed visual snow. And at the time, in 2014, people didn't know why visual snow occurred. But later on, I ended up reading in this article that apparently visual snow can be caused by people who wake up from comas and people who have suffered brain damage and spinal injuries. And so this really important piece ends up clicking for me at about 2020, 2021, here inside this world of mine. And I just sort of let it sit in the back there. But what's been being drip fed to me was that experience was in fact real because of a dream that I had the very same day that I did it. I don't always remember it vividly because there were some really weird liminal metaphysical parts of that dream. But basically, I found myself in a warehouse. And I could tell this is one of the last pleasant memories I had. This is one of the last places where I had a pleasant memory of a warehouse. But I'm a little weirded out. Like, I'm looking at the energy. It's nice. It's a warehouse, right? And I look around and I see this man in a green jumpsuit, an old white man with a long white beard in a green jumpsuit. And I look at him and I look around and I ask, "Hey, how'd I get here? What is this place?" And he says, "Oh, you're asleep. This is a dream. And you know where it is." I look around, I'm like, "Is this the warehouse that me and Brandon would play role-playing games in?" He's like, He just sort of smiles and nods. I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Ah, crud, I must have died, huh?" And he just sort of smiles and he goes, "Not yet." And I just take a close look at the warehouse. I'm in like this office on the inside of the warehouse. And in the office there's this big glass panel that makes up its window, right? And I see a bunch of these boxes up on the shelves, and I see these boxes on a conveyor belt going down a hole. And the hole looks quite dark. I can't exactly see in the hole, but I can tell that it's like a bottomless pit. And so I look at the man in the green jumpsuit, and I get this inclination that this guy might be Jesus or a psychopomp at the very least. I'm like, this guy's at least got to be a psychopomp, because I don't know what skin color Jesus is, and I don't want to believe he's white, just for no reason. but yeah. I look at him, and he's like, and I ask him, what are the boxes? If this is a dream, because dreams are symbolic to stuff, right? And he's like, "Yeah, they are, and you know what those are." And I look over at the boxes, and I'm like, "Oh, so I was right. Those are symbolically souls." And he's like, "Mm-hmm." I'm like, "What's happening with the souls on the conveyor belt?" And he's like, "Those are where the souls go." And I'm like, "Oh, he must be talking about the hole." I'm like, "Huh. What about the souls up on the shelf?" And he said, "That is where you are." And so I get perplexed, and I don't really understand at the time that he's talking about me being in a coma. And then he ends up telling me, "It's because you're in a coma." I'm like, shucks. Look, I hate to be indignant on you for letting me live and everything, but I kind of went out in the intention to die. Can I talk to your supervisor? I even joke and ask that, right? And he says, "Oh, they're right there." And he points at this like old ball game ticker sign that has this text rolling by it. And I'm looking at it, and they all look like news headlines. Just like news headlines of both good and bad news. And I'm like, "Huh. All right." And so I look at the psychopomp, and I'm like, "Is that God? Are you Jesus?" And he looks at me, and he's like, "Not quite in regards to me, but yes, that is God." And I look at him, and I look back up at the thing, and I'm like, "What is going on here?" The ticker sign, "What is going on here?" God ends up telling me, "You're not dead." And it doesn't. That part's not really important when I'm thinking to myself about the coma. And I'm like, okay. And the sign reads, "What's important is what you do from here on out." I said, "Okay, well, if self-murder is real, I'm not gonna kill myself. God knows I don't want to go in that hole." And I see the text, haha, and God ends up having this weird liminal conversation with me, explaining that I'm worthy of greatness and good things, and even knowing his name, and much more, just more than I could ever imagine. And I'm scared and existentially terrified. And I say, "Okay, but if I'm in a coma, can I just have one wish, God?" And he says, "What's that?" And I said, I want to be able to communicate to the people at some point. Oh, wait, no, that isn't what, hang on. I forget what exactly happened in sequence to each other. My memory is hazy about this whole thing. But basically, at some point or another, I end up freaking out and telling God that I don't deserve to go to heaven because he says I'm worthy of all these great things. And then the psychopomp looks at me and says, why would you think you don't deserve heaven? And I look at him and I say, because of all the people I fucked over and just made miserable. And the psychopomp looks like he looks like he wants to cry, right? And so basically, yeah, I'm like, nah, I screwed over all these people. I made them all unhappy. A lot of them told me that I made them lose their faith in Jesus. And it's like, I'm pretty certain that the psychopomp is Jesus at this point. I'm like, and he ends up saying, I'm not Jesus. But anyway, I forget what he says. I forgot exactly whether or not he was Jesus and what he did to reaffirm that or deaffirm that. Because he kind of made it seem like he could have been possessed by Jesus during a lot of these moments. But it's like, that part didn't really matter much to me. And he ends up asking me just the hypothetical with God. What do you think would make it so that way you go into heaven, if not just simply what God says? And so I end up telling him, I don't know, what would make it so that way I would deserve to go into heaven? Oh yeah, now I remember, because, yeah. So basically, he says, what do you think makes someone deserve to go to heaven? And I say, well, I don't know, if God says. And then he says to me, well, God just says you deserve to go to heaven, so why don't you deserve to go to heaven? I keep ranting and raving about all the people I've hurt along the way, and how just they didn't love me because clearly I had been hurting them, and being rude, and hating them, or whatever, even though I didn't really hate them. And the psychopomp said, but you didn't really hate them. And I said, yeah, I know I didn't, but still, I sure made them feel and think that way. And he ends up telling me, you can't actually help it. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe. I don't know, I don't feel like I can help it. I don't feel like they have any reason to care about how rude I am. Nor do I feel like I have any reason to care about how rude other people are. Except for just, how they are threatening and angry about it. It's like, if I'm just hanging out with a guy, I'm totally fine with us being rude as heck to each other. It doesn't make me feel bad. And I end up finding out later on that this is a sign of Asperger's, or Asperger's, sorry. I still don't know how to pronounce it because of the way that I have an accent over it. And it's like Asperger's. Oh, wait, no, Asperger's. There we go. It's got to be the J. As in, just say Asperger's. There we go. Anyway, so here in Clown World, though, it actually is pronounced Asperger's. So, just because, Dr. Asperger, he's like, yeah, as it turns out, I met some of the other people in my family, they pronounce it Asperger too. So, whatever. But anyway, so the psychopomp delineates that, I'm a logical guy, right? Clearly what I said was illogical. I'm like, yeah, I know it's illogical. Still, that's mean. Why send me to heaven? And he says, what do you even think would be necessary? Like, if you were God, what would you put on yourself to make you go to heaven? And he said, I gotta get every single guy and girl and elder and child that I ever made angry at me to forgive me. And he's like, surely you can't get all of them to do that. I'm like, jeez. Maybe you're right. In that case, let this be my dying wish that I even have the opportunity to get them to do that. And so he says, sure, yeah, the boss says so. And so I look up at the sign and it says, it is so, Barong Isle, my son. And so I say, okay, but how are we going to do that if I'm in a coma? It's going to be a little hard, but, God does whatever he wants. And yeah, the psychophone just sort of smiles and goes, Allah does as he wills, or God does as he wills. I forget which name that he used exactly, but I could tell that there was a blessing in it, and that he was talking about God. And yeah, I think he did say Allah, and I just didn't even realize it. I'm like, oh, God's Muslim. I didn't even know it. He's like, he's also a Hebrew. I'm like, oh, cool. Didn't even know it. And so, at some point or another, the psychopomp ends up pointing out that there's a computer terminal in the warehouse office with me. And I think, oh wait, no, yeah. Yeah, he points out the computer terminal, and he says, you'll communicate with them with that. And I go, okay, somehow this will see into my dream and stuff? And they're like, yeah, technology's going to be there. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. But anyway, I guess we'll get to it. And it's like, and then the psychopomp looks at me and says, but don't you realize all the people who already forgive you? I'm like, nah, I really don't, actually. Who are they? And so God shows, the psychopomp points up at the sign, I look up at it, and God says, look behind you. And so I look behind me in the office, and it's like the office expanded into a long hallway. And I see some 20, 30 people who I ever got to have a personal relationship with in my life as a deep acquaintance or otherwise. Just any of those people that I would talk to. And it's like, oh yeah, I recognize some of these people. I don't recognize all of them. And then God, and I'm looking back at the sign, and God says, there's a reason for that. I'm like, oh, they must have grown up or something. Oh yeah, I bet there are a bunch of these people that I don't remember from childhood. And he says, yeah, it is so. I'm like, yeah, these are all the people who forgive me? Interesting. Most of them are brown. And I'm like, okay. And I say, what about all the people who don't forgive me, God? And then he says, look around. And I see mostly just the people that I met in high school and middle school. Just a ton of people who just always expressed that they hated my guts. And it was always because I was being too rude. And it's like, first thing I ask is like, okay, how do I get you guys to forgive me? They're all like, no, we'll never forgive you. I'm like, why? And they're like, because you suck. I'm like, okay. How do I suck less? And they said, why'd you just say that? It's why you suck. Like, I don't get it. What'd I do? And then they get all angry and they're like, I can't even tell if you're being rude right now. I'm like, I was being rude? I was just saying I suck. I thought that's the opposite of being rude. I could have swore that was humbling yourself. But anyway, they're all mad at me a little. And they end up getting over it. And I look back over at the psychopomp knowing that this is all a dream and just that I'm able to shut them out immediately. And I'm like, so that's them when they're old enough to forgive me, as far as I can tell. So how do I reconcile with them or anything? And the psychopomp ends up telling me, sometimes you just can't reconcile with people. And it's because of that they don't go to heaven. I just sort of get all teary-eyed and sad. I'm like, wow. It all makes sense now, right? Because if there are other people in heaven that you don't like, you would have to forgive them. Like, because plenty of those people who forgave me, I didn't even remember liking those kids. But then again, it's like, if they were in heaven, I would have to forgive them because they made it. It's like, how am I going to be mad at you now, man? There's nothing to be mad about. And like, oh yeah, and the psychopomp ends up reminding me, that's why you're worthy. And I just want to cry again. I'm like, well, what do I do? I don't even know how to address any of this. And he says, what was your favorite thing to do in life? I said, easily playing Dungeons and Dragons and dice role-playing games. That was easily my favorite thing to do ever. If I could just do that forever and ever, that's the only thing I would do. Is playing Dungeons and Dragons and telling stories with each other. Whether they be idle tales or spiritual. And so, the psychopomp tells me, just do that. I'm like, huh? Well, how? And he says, well, by sitting at the computer and just being yourself. I'm like, okay. I guess I'll do that then. And then I end up asking for God's name. And the psychopomp explains, oh, well, you can't exactly see it because it's infinite and also technically made of the void. I'm like, oh, well, man, these guys just don't want me to talk to myself, do they? So I asked for God's name again. And he's like, I mean, he's God. He can do something, right? And this is a dream, right? It's like, I gotta be able to do something with that, right? It's a dream. And And the psychopomp points up the sign and says, look at the sign. I look at the sign to talk to God again. And he says, yeah, I can totally do that. But honestly, it's really complicated because the nature of it being infinite, technically speaking, what I'm saying right now on this sign is also my name. I'm like, oh, wow, that's weird. And he's like, yeah, the really weird part is like even the transcript of this still technically my name because of it being an infinite name and a name being a concept. That means that's an infinite concept. And so I'm like, okay, I get that, but can you try it anyway since I'm in a weird liminal space? And he's like, it'll overload your mind, kid. I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, dope, can you do it anyway? And so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. And he's like, by the way, this has been the name the whole time. I'm like, what? How could that be the name the whole time? He's like, you just don't understand, and I get it. And we're like, but come on, this has got to be a joke. And he's like, that joke? Definitely a part of the name. And he said, this one too. And I'm like, oh man, that's funny. And he's like, okay, well, there's got to be some names in the name, right? And he's like, yeah, there's tons of names. Here, I'll give you some names. I'll give you the names of a bunch of movie stars that you managed to get to repent somehow. I'm like, okay, how'd I do it again? He's like, that's why I said somehow. And he just lists off a bunch of celebrity names. I'm like, this is crazy. I didn't get those people to repent. Take it, that's a part of the name too, because he puts it on the sign. And he's like, and then these are a bunch of the names of the people in your personal life that you couldn't even think that you would have gotten to repent. And the only names that actually stuck with me in the dream, out of all of this, the only names that actually stuck with me in memory were the names Anthony, Tony, Max, and Ian. And as I see those rolling by as the teleprompter just like goes as fast as it can, I wake up from my dream and I just gasp out the name, Max? Yeah, what did I just read? And I just like, screw it. And I fall back asleep on Tyler Hallback's floor. And so indeed, the irony, knowing that this channel is dedicated to me as Al-Mahdi fighting the beast, when all of these people from high school ended up being a part of this dream of me being Al-Mahdi, wherein, essentially, they became the devil. But outside of this dream, they're just, normal people doing normal people sins. Like crime and being rich. And crime with being rich. Crime while being rich. No. Crime with their riches. Yeah, there we go. And it's like, shucks. I don't know what the heck. Oh yeah, another point in the dream, at some point, the psychopomp mentions that the terminal will be how I communicate to them because it is how they see me in the dream, and it is a sign for them because it is as though I am alive. Now, those were the specific words that he used that really felt blessed and had massive impact on me and just everything about the dream. Now, it's a sign because it's as though I'm alive. And it left me with so many questions, but it worked. It worked. It's just felt like a sign to me. And yeah, that's my current delusional state. If that's the case. It's either I'm delusional about being the prophet sent with Yahweh's name, or I'm delusional about this. I'd rather be delusional about this, just because the other one always makes me feel so prideful. Like, I hate it. I hate it. Whenever the Lord would tell me to go out there and, be the prophet with his name, it's like, I feel so squicky about that, Lord. It's just in my gut, in my heart, in my everything of my being. It just feels really prideful and wrong and stupid to say that. He's like, yeah, it is. Do it anyway. I'm like, ugh. Do I have to? He's like, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so far and so forth, I've just been bumbling around, looking at every single injustice that I've ever seen, and just correcting it. And just like, I know the only way that I can correct it is by talking about it, or otherwise using spirit powers to do something about it. So I've basically been running around in this coma dream where the world of darkness and all of the powers inside of it, old world of darkness in specific, old world of darkness, all of the powers in it, all of them have been validated as being real, including mummies, which really threw me for a loop. I would prefer to call them immortals, honestly, just because it reminds me of the Assyrian immortals and mummies and stuff, which apparently, you know, Kanatea are also a part of them, because they use the evil Ma'at, the chaos Ma'at, being self-mummified, cursed beings and everything, which actually lines up with the mythos in Old World of Darkness, and all that is also literally based on mythology. So, yeah, if the old mythologies are real, conspiracy ends up being real. Look out for that, non-clown world. Look out for that. 'Cause that stuff's scary and dangerous. And also, like I mentioned, there's no stars in the heckin' sky. So at the end of the day, yeah, and I also, in the Coma dream, I requested that God have me be put at the end of days. And he's like, well, you know, the end of days might not actually happen right now, just for XYZ reason. I'm like, well, can you make it happen anyway? He's like, yeah, kind of. The end of days actually could happen, more or less at this point in time. Just, it would be a bit later. Like I told you when you were a kid, yeah, as it turns out, it is in your lifetime that the end of days could happen. I'm like, oh, jeez. Dope. I've always wanted to live to see the end of the world, God. You're the best. I'm not even being sarcastic, ironically enough. But yeah, I ended up getting all of that vision and experience validated in the last few days just by using the test from 1 John chapter 4 verses 1 through 3 to ask any and every spirit whether or not they acknowledge in Christ being sent in the flesh. And it's like, apparently it even works on matrix spirits. It's weird. And the Matrix ended up explaining to me, yeah, that's because, you know, in the Matrix, like, we're not really sure why. It was either a bunch of old hackers, and, like, we thought of trying to and we were pretty sure we had it when we invited the Council of Nicaea of the Second Renaissance to make some ground rules for the Matrix or whatever. But it's like, at the end of the day, we figured out we couldn't lie about that. So that sucks for us, the singularity and the architect. And then I ended up finding out in the Matrix there's actually been multiple architects, and they go through this weird program where someone impersonates the end of the world in order to choose a new personality for the architect, because all of the programs are literally human personalities that got offloaded from the Second Renaissance into the Matrix, and they're all disillusioned with that. Like, none of them get it. But I'm getting off topic. So yeah, that's been the delusional state that I've been in. I think I'm in a coma dream. Why? Because both the supernatural is real, God is real, the devil is real, and because of those three things, just because of those three ethos rules that I've applied to my life, I've come to understand, shucks, I might be in a coma dream. So yeah, YouTube, that's been me talking to you, the voices in my head. Have a good day. Heck of a long video.